Hi there. We're back. It's still 2020. And we're back with
still 2020.
Jenna and Tyler Kelly.
Fresh of 2020.
Yep. And one thing we wanted to touch upon is that I think with our expectation the week before, we did the Christmas show, and we were in the midst of it last week. They call it Hell Week. The traffic was brutal, but it wasn't.
The business wasn't there.
It wasn't that crazy down here. I think there was a. Well, there's no use hiding. We're not going to sugarcoat it here. What was the? There was a publication that said don't go to the Keys. What was that? They said. Didn't you hear that?
No.
Like a couple months ago, there was a publication that said stay away from the Keys because tourism is ruining the reefs. They said that. It was...
You can battle that one way or another.
Oh, no, not battle. I'm not saying battle. We're not going to say it. I'm saying it happened. It was said.
I think.
And right after Irma, I think last year it wasn't that great. It hasn't been the same since 2016.
No, and that's the thing is after Irma, Irma was actually good for us as far as a diving and snorkeling aspect. Irma was wonderful for us. All the nasty growth and the bleaching and everything like that. Irma actually pretty much sandblasted our reef and gave it a fresh start. So our reef, and with the coral restoration group that's down here right now, we're actually thriving.
The Reef Foundation. Yeah,
we are thriving like we haven't in probably 15 years.
Now, I will tell you, though, that the Florida Keys Marine Sanctuary has put in basically a request to limit the activity, especially of locals.
Yes.
For accessing the reef lines. And they've decided that they want to try to expand the Florida Keys Marine Sanctuary protected areas so that people don't have access to them unless you are part of
Blue Star
a scuba organization or,
because a lot of those organizations are actually help in maintaining health.
Right.
I've met a bunch of being part of the Rotary. They came down, and it's amazing some of the things these people are doing. The way they have these, it's almost like an orchard for coral.
Yeah,
where they set it up and they do
coral restoration program.
Yeah, and they grow them on these things. They look like
it's PVC piping.
Yeah, it looks like antenna underwater.
They actually like inseminate them and everything.
Yeah.
It's really crazy.
It's actually really cool.
But what's happening with the tourism part is it's actually happening in the opposite direction, because what they're saying is they want to limit locals to all those places, but they're still okay with the tourism only going.
Especially snorkeling and things like that.
Certain
to give
areas.
Awareness and stuff like that.
Right.
But whether that had an effect or not, whether that had an effect or not, I'm just saying that that was said. We're not like the TDC Council or anything like one of the local radio stations that just tell you only the bullshit lines, right? We tell it like it is. We weren't. There were a lot of hotels that had vacancies that normally wouldn't have vacancies. We had. It seemed like we had day trippers down here because you go to a local supermarket, and it was crazy. I've talked to people that work there, and they take pictures of how people behave. There's a. I guess it happens into a lot of tourist towns. But you see people when they go to a store, they'll come in with, I guess they're on their way wherever they're going, and they bring 8 people in with them, and they'll walk down the aisle, and the way people are texting and doing shit, they're just getting out of the way. Everything. I go in, I get my shit early in the morning if I go for a big run and then go in with a basket. I wish it was like fucking rollerball. You know what I mean? When you go in there and just go in there and start saying, hey, look at this. I don't care. You knock them on their ass. Hey, old people are that way anyway. Mm-hmm. They're that way anyway. I give them a pass. They barely can make it down the aisle. So they're not being rude. They're just unaware. They're happy to be standing.
I find that most of the time it's the people that are trying to read the labels, especially if they're a tourist that's from, not in this area or a different country.
I'd say it's Miami. I mean, there's people from the mainland that come down here.
Well, there's a lot.
The day trippers that come down and they get on their boat and they start buying shit and they're throwing their trash.
And that's what irritates me is you're coming down here with your boat, your RV, you're here for a day or just even your vehicle. And you go into the store and you buy all this stuff that's in plastic wrappers or cardboard boxes. And then you get to your vehicle and you unload it all into your cooler and you leave all that cardboard and plastic in the shopping cart and just push it into the corral or into the bushes. That's...
And conversely, when they're on the way back, they don't secure their shit. Mm-hmm. You got people that shouldn't have a boat, and you have... Every so often after a busy weekend, you see life preservers and noodles and all that shit coming out.
My last instruction before the new year, when I went down to Big Pine to do my captain's instruction, I saw a boat heading down there, and he lost one life jacket, and one was about to go. And I pulled up next to him at a red line. I was like, "Hey, you guys lost a life jacket." Didn't understand what I was saying. I was like, "Orange jacket," and they looked back and they saw one, and they were like, "Meh," and kept going.
Oh, man.
Didn't even go back there, pull off the road, and secure the other ones that were probably about to fly out. I only saw one, but it's like,
Right after Irma, there was... we had some workers down here that are a pain in the ass, too. I saw remnants on my car where someone lost a 5-gallon bucket of paint the back of their truck. Yeah. And I was driving up on it and went through a puddle, and it just splashed up my side. By the time I got home, it was
dry.
Yeah.
I think that Isla Mirada is probably the least.
And then you see coolers, planters.
Oh my God! The last week I was working at Revo, we had one of our delivery trucks coming down from Cadillac, Michigan, and we got all the boats offloaded off this 18-wheeler. And he goes, "Hey, can you guys give me a hand for a second?" I was like, "Sure." He goes, "Yeah, I picked up this cooler about a mile up the road." He ran over a cooler that fell out of the back of a boat or a truck, and it was wedged in between his fender and his tire.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
unsecured loads.
This is a tourism area. Yeah. We encourage tourism. Come here. Go eat at our restaurants. See what it's like to be here. Spend your money here.
But respect.
But, be respectful to us. There's some of us that live here full time. Right?
Yeah.
But the other side is that when we make a really big deal out of things, which we need to, especially when it came to the Indian key fill issue.
When you get 1,000 Clark Griswolds coming down here, you know what I mean?
Right. Then it gets a little bit frustrating, and then they decide to cut areas off.
But
our reefs are beautiful.
The thing that... The hard thing about that Indian key fill thing was because... it was a gathering place for one particular group of people. And, but I mean, there are different places throughout the country where you could pick almost any group of people would be different. Down here, they happen to be Cuban. Up my neck of the woods, there's certain types of Caucasians that when they come out and they're doing shitty stuff, and all different groups, and they have their groups, and you think for some reason they're all like that, but we have a huge Cuban community down here, and we just happen to have the group that comes down to to the Indian key fill really didn't respect that area.
Right.
Yeah, and we have 3 or 4 in our current neighborhood. In our previous, we had 2 or 3, and they said, no, we're not part of that kind of Cuban community.
Well, I wouldn't even say it's kind of a Cuban. It's just certain segments of every group of people. They'll come. That's they're careless and destructive, and they don't really care about
But remember, we have beautiful water, we have beautiful reefs, and come here and see them.
The other thing I was going to say,
go scuba diving.
And it's going to be the next couple months. I guess normally a couple of years ago, before Irma, this would happen. We would still be carrying on through that hell week, which never seemed to come about, and it would start picking up. It used to be years ago, I think in 2007 when I first came down here, people say, well, Valentine's Day was the start. And then remember the year afterwards, they said, well, it's a little earlier this year and then a little earlier. And then we didn't have any real storms or anything like that. And it was really getting crazy.
Our normal
and then people
season
had places, they went someplace else. And now we places are opening up and their prices are kind of out of whack down here.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
They're kind of out of whack. We're not doing anything to attract people. They see how pricey it is.
Yeah, 100% of nothing is still nothing.
Yeah.
So you would think that okay, if you are a high end restaurant or something, and it's Hell Week, and it's not really been hell, and that's when you make a ton of money for that week. Lower some of your prices and get some people back down here.
15% off.
I'm not going to mention them by name, but that place reopened on mid-December.
Yeah.
A friend of mine is one of the managers there. I don't know how they make it. You'll never know if they're busy or not. They could tell you anything they want because it's a closed, all-inclusive.
Yeah, especially if you can't see any of the activities.
Yeah, you don't know. They'll tell you. They'll say, "Oh, we're doing incredibly." Yeah, we're doing incredibly. There, they can say that. We wouldn't fucking know.
Right.
You can know the places to the north and south by just driving in.
See, and the other thing I'd like to give people that are listening and haven't ever come down or have and only been once or twice, you got to pick the right seasons for the activities you want to do. If you're a diver or a boater or any of that stuff and you need to be out on open water, winter, unfortunately, is not necessarily the best time. You might have your good days, you might have your bad days. But be prepared that you're going to have a couple more days in the hotel or on land rather than that on the water. Because we get our cold fronts, we get our rainstorms, we get our high winds.
I will tell you, though, that if you're Canadian or you're from the north, you're from the Midwest.
We had people from Boston. Right. They're on here. They'll jump in the water.
They will jump in this water. They think that this is comfortable.
That's July.
Because they're used to cold, fresh water.
What is it right now?
76.
The water temp.
See, it doesn't get above that in
until summer.
No,
up there, yeah.
And not
but what I'm saying is, if you're a diver or a snorkeler or you want to go out boating by yourself,
and you're
these aren't really the conditions.
Oh no,
you get the rough seas, we actually have to think about everyone's safety. So we can't take out 30 snorkelers and 10 divers when it's blowing 20 miles an hour out there. So it's, if you want to come out and you want to experience the full aspect of comfortable water and what you live here for.
It really depends on what you're...
I think we're shaking down, which I guess to us, you know what, you'll find out the market will prevail. Right. And people, they'll look to the Keys. I don't know. I know with the whenever there's any problems abroad, domestic places look really good. So I don't know what's going to happen in the next couple months, but
now remember, right now it's comfortable here. It's not Africa hot.
No.
But you hit May through half of September,
94 degrees with a heat index of 105.
It's Africa hot. So if you can't handle the heat where you're at in the summer and you want to come down here in the summer.
Best boating conditions.
It is the best and calmest boating conditions, but our water is like bath water. And
80 plus.
You know what? It really is funny.
But see, this is Jim doesn't boat, doesn't fish.
Yeah.
So
I may be doing more of it now since my life situation's changed a little.
Well, that's fabulous. We might have to take you fishing.
Yeah, I can do that.
There you go.
And I don't have a problem with the other things right here because of what I do for a living.
Yeah.
But that was. I think a lot of people were disappointed. I think the chamber probably were. There was it
wasn't our normal Hell Week.
They screwed up a lot of things. Like we used to have a boat parade and stuff. Key Largo doesn't really organize like different places down here because we're non-incorporated, and we had. I had discussions with people down here. People say, well, if Key Largo Incorporated but there's a lot of things that Key Largo doesn't get because of that.
The other thing that I've noticed is over the past several months, while the northern part of Florida was still getting red tide, they were insinuating that we had red tide down here.
We do not.
We have never had any red tide in Key Largo.
Who was insinuating?
The news, everything.
There were some people that said they found traces of certain types of algae in Key West. And then they related it to
there were some things. There was some. There were the sewer in Fort Lauderdale. Was the sewage thing, and Miami had some problems. But they try to. I think when they hear South Florida, they think the Keys and
right. Now this isn't really South Florida. We are the islands that are south
of Florida,
South Florida.
Not only that, not only do we have that land link that separates us. I mean the highway link, and then you have the marshlands that separate us, and then you have a small Florida city, and then Miami doesn't start for another 40, 50 miles.
A lot of my friends don't like me when I say that I have to go to Florida. They're like, you live in Florida. I'm like, no, I don't. If we were to get rid of our 2 bridges, we're not attached to Florida. We're the Caribbean.
We're not part of the...
This is actually, this used to be the Bahamas.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. The archipelago that we're on. Is that we used to be the Bahamas.
Florida Keys has been traded about 3 or 4 different times.
We used to be Bahamas.
We used to be part of the Bahamas. Yeah.
Cuba owned us for a while, and we purchased it back.
Spanish owned us for a while.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, Cuba didn't. Because
Cuba didn't own us. The Bahamas. We were Bahamian.
I meant Cuba was Spanish prior to 1898, and Cuba was only Cuba since
of the Bahamas.
Really since after Spanish-American War.
Right, and still the Bahamas now as well are still an archipelago.
No, but Cuba was a
I know.
I mean, if it was part of Spain.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Spain, because Cuba was part of Spain and Hispaniola and all that.
We were Spanish for
it was weird.
Some time.
It's weird how that was divvied up. If we got a couple minutes here, the history of there were people here. They call it the New World. I mean, there were people that had their own world here. That here prior, right. But when it was first discovered by the Spanish sent out their expeditions and stuff like that.
Discovered, but
the Europeans discovered it for themselves.
But there was already
and then they went back and they had some. Here. The Pope decided to split along the longitudinal lines who could have what, and they didn't know the extent, so they gave most of it to the Spanish, and they gave Portugal got Brazil. Mm-hmm. And then there was a whole feeding frenzy, like France, the Dutch, the English, and all that stuff. The English they stayed in North America and stuff like that, and the French and English, and the French and the French had a little bite at South America with French Guiana and all that stuff, and in the Caribbean, and but it was mainly a Spanish and Portuguese enterprise when you're talking about Central and South America, and then North America was French and English, with because there was no unified German, and then obviously Russia. People always forget about Russia because they had Alaska up there. And what are you looking at?
Sorry, so one of our main tourist attractions that I go through, which is Adams Waterway. Waterway was...
we talked about this on one episode.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Dredged out by a personal gentleman that moved down from New York. He actually paid to have it done. That's why it's named after him. Yeah. So I always tell people, it's been a long time, and if you look at the walls, you can see fossilized coral heads and this and that. So reading here, it says, starting about 100,000 years ago, Wisconsin Glacier began lowering sea levels, exposing the coral reef and surrounding marine sediments. By 15,000 years ago, the sea level had dropped 300 to 350 feet below our level.
Yes.
So
basically what it is an archipelago is what used to be a coral reef. So what we live on is a coral reef.
all that dead land went almost all the way out the Bahamas.
Where we're living on right now used to be the Great Barrier Reef.
Yes, it used to be the Great Barrier Reef. Back then it would have been the largest.
Yes.
And it got exposed when the water
in North America.
Actually,
the Great Barrier Reef is the biggest one in the world.
No, I know, but I believe ours was the biggest. Yeah. And that's what we live on.
Now we're minimized to the 3 mile offshore little portions that we have.
And we have patch reef.
Yeah.
But this used to be, and as well as a patch reef.
I thought the Great Barrier Reef was hundreds of miles long.
Oh, it is.
It is, but this is as well, because you think we used to be the Bahamas.
10 miles.
Oh, that was part of it.
All the way down. So when some of the sea life that survived ended up going deeper and down to our current patch reef, which is now the third.
Is that what the
reef? But an archipelago, what an archipelago is, it's coral. It's petrified coral. That's what we live on. That's why you take every one of these little rocks, you look at them, and they have little, fossils of old shells. And
they don't call the Hawaiian Islands archipelago?
Hawaiian's volcanic.
Yeah, but
we are not volcanic. Neither.
No, but I mean, how about the Aleutians?
I'm not sure.
Because they come off like that. Okay. Right. But it's a rim, I'll tell you, it would be a volcanic too.
Right.
Okay. Hey,
we are not volcanic.
Let's take a break. We're going to come back, and this is at the 20-minute. It's perfect.
All right.
Whether you're one of our regular visitors to the Florida Keys or you can't wait to visit for the first time, you'll want to stay up to date on everything that's going on in the Florida Keys. To learn all the secrets, tips, and the stuff we don't talk about to anyone but each other, visit 43keys.com. Sign up for our newsletter and never miss any of the exciting things we have planned for you. That's 43 Keys. The number 4, the number 3, keys.com.
We're back. Tyler is doing a little reading and stuff like that of the Florida Keys. It's an excellent read of the Florida Keys if you really want to. It's more contemporary. Is a book called Last Train to Paradise. And it's about Flagler's railroad that he built down the east coast of Florida and down to Miami, and then Miami down to Key West. His dream was to get a deep water port in Key West and make Key West the shipping hub for all South and Central America with Americans. And he actually pretty much accomplished an incredible engineering feat at the time. But it was pretty interesting, the book. If you get a chance to read it, it was great. It opens up with the Labor Day hurricane.
Yes.
1935.
Yes,
yeah, 1935. Yeah, but it was very dramatic. It was actually
before they started naming hurricanes.
It would make a really fucking great.
Called the Labor Day hurricane.
I mean, I don't think people, disaster movies set in the past, unless they're real, like The Last Days of Pompeii, aren't really doesn't grab people like they do.
And again,
but actually, if you read the story, it reads like a fucking disaster movie. The way they give them moment by moment, how they had when they get the pressure was dropping and stuff like that. Oh, God.
Well, see, and even as a person that has lived down here in Miami for most of his life, reading facts about this, like I'm looking up right now, Monroe County wasn't established until 1824.
No, it was not. Monroe County was established as actually it was a trading hub, and it was a customs port.
Yes. So the first post office in the Florida Keys opened in Key West in 1829, and the first tourist
with the capital of Florida for the longest
was
time
1832.
And Key West was the only place in the South that was continuously occupied by the federal government, the Union.
And our precious Indian Key, Phil, that we know it by.
I know all about it.
John Hoosman bought Indian Key for $5,000 in 1831.
Yeah, Houseman.
John Houseman?
A Houseman.
Because there's an actor.
There's an
yeah, I know.
Or H-O-U-S.
House.
It's not
Houseman.
No, Houseman.
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 House.
Yep.
House.
German.
German?
House.
Yeah,
actually, house in German.
Fucking Germans getting involved in there.
H-A-U-S.
Get out of the Keys, Germans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Go kidding. We love you guys. You want France and Poland. No, just kidding about that. But
yeah, no, it's actually really neat to see it because when history was able to be part of the written word, it was Ponce de Leon that discovered the Keys technically and first chartered it. And I believe it was in the 1500s.
We did do a show where we talked about movies made in the Keys and stuff like that.
We did.
And then I was thinking about if I was going to shoot. There's tons of movies. Right now there's tons of TV shows on Netflix, Amazon Prime. That's zombie and vampire shows all over the stuff.
Vampires everywhere.
Zombies and vampires any place. But you know what? You never see vampires in the tropics.
Yeah.
But because of that fucking sun thing.
Yeah.
Well, what if they created put some kind of heavy duty
mud.
Not mud. What's the stuff they put? Zinc. Right. The zinc on it. The zinc. And someone wearing zinc. And they made zinc that was skin tone zinc. Skin tone zinc. But to get the eyeballs, and they'd have to put that and get it up in their nostrils.
Yeah, how would they get it in their hair?
Yeah, and they have to wear the hat, and they're wearing gloves.
They would just have to be covered.
But a vampire in the tropics. How would it be a fucking, hanging out, drinking, he could be drinking blood out of a coconut. Right?
Or
you never see, Tyler was saying you never see vampires in the tropics. They do a lot of zombies in the tropics. That makes sense because you got they originated in the tropics. You know that.
Zombies
Haiti.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah.
Voodoo and all that shit.
Yeah.
That's where there was a movie called The White Zombie. It was from the 30s or 40s.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I've never.
I don't think it had to do with it being a Caucasian, I think. It was just a pale zombie and stuff like that. But the vampire thing, or you think of all the cold weather things, vampires are better rainy, not sunny. Well, there was a movie, God, it was Bill Pullman was in it, and it was called Before Daylight or something like that. It was a family of vampires, and he drove around in a blacked out van in the southwestern part of the United States. So why not you never see them in the tropics, in a tiki bar, and they'd probably sleep a lot during the daytime and stuff, and then you come out at night. It's nighttime. Fucking we got a nightlife. I mean, maybe not up here. It would really suck for a vampire up here because they'd only have a couple places they could go.
Down here, yeah.
Oh, you're down here, up here. Up here. I mean, in the Keys, meaning versus Key West. Key West is all night.
I know.
The upper Keys would suck for a vampire because everyone starts going to bed when it gets dark.
Yeah.
So it'd be like the vampire would look around to kill somebody, and I was like, they'd have to knock on. Yes. Could you invite me in? Are you a vampire? Yes. I'm not going to invite you in. Go away. I mean, that's what's going to happen all the time. No one's going to invite you in down there. You have to go down to Key West.
Yeah.
Or hang out near the Caribbean Club.
Maybe.
Yeah, and just
I can imagine that would be
the fucking guy's out there the whole time. He's always sitting he never drinks and stuff like that. He sits on the bench.
He wears a Bloody Mary.
Yeah, it's a Bloody Mary. He's drinking that red. It looks like a rum punch. Warm. No ice cubes.
A lot of people don't realize that we're actually not the first key.
What?
I forget the name of the first key.
The first key?
It was called the Vampire Key, since we're talking about it.
No, Key Largo is actually not the first key.
No,
it's Cross Key.
Cross Key.
Cross Key.
Yep. Nailed it. Back to vampires.
Manatee Bay and all that stuff. But yeah, so everyone thinks, Key Largo is the first and Key West is last.
Well, right. Although they still call Key Biscayne, that's still a key. Mm-hmm. But technically, key just means Kyle in Spanish, which just means island. So we're all keys because we're all islands.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're Key Largo, which just means large island.
Which really doesn't help you if you're a vampire.
No,
once again,
it doesn't.
Go back to
if you're,
because there is in a vampire story, they do get on the boat and stuff. We moved on to vampire stuff because we did all that history stuff. Yeah. We could talk about it. There's no new history. I think we did a whole research on the Keys one time. We did a whole show, and there's.
Well, we did a bunch of history.
We had that treasure fleet. And that's an interesting thing.
Okay, so Mel Fisher is what you were talking about.
A unique Keys character, treasure hunter.
Now,
who doesn't want to fucking find a bunch of gold?
Right.
And there's a couple unique things about it. There's a couple unique. I'll say Mel Fisher.
Yes.
Yeah,
was probably the most well known, but there was many treasure hunters.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, recently, there was USS America. You ever hear that one? That wasn't in the Keys. That was near the Panama when it went down. But it was taking gold bullion from the gold rush. It was this mid-wheeler, and it went down with tons of gold in it.
But if you do ever find yourself in Key West, going to the Shipwreck Museum there,
it's amazing.
It is amazing.
The Shipwreck Museum or the Mel Fisher Museum?
It is Mel Fisher's Shipwreck Museum. And it's so cool because the gold coins, or doubloons you would call them, right? Yeah. But the gold coins have so many stamps all over them, and that's how you can see the history of where they came from. Because these ships, these like big like Spanish galleons would come in with all these dowries and everything else aboard their ships at every port.
They would have to
unload every single gold coin, and they would get stamped. Yep. With their shipping ports on them. So that's why if you look at one of those gold coins, they're not perfectly round, they're not perfectly flat. They are perfectly weighed to be the certain weight of each one.
Oh, they got re-stamped each time?
Yes, and they were stamped at each port to show the path of where the gold went and what its end destination was.
Same with gold bars.
And some of them actually had a hole punch in them, depending on the port that you went, and it was taxation. So they would take a tiny little chunk of your gold doubloon.
Oh, wow.
As part of your taxation.
That's why they look like a rat chewed on it.
That's why these coins are all messed up and sideways.
Looks like a rat chewed on it and took chunks out.
But that's when a guy gets a gold coin and bites into the air.
Back in the day with the gold bars, you had your main stamp on the top. That's where it originated from. That's who cast it and all that. But on the back side, on the bottom side, is where it was not taxed, but stamped everywhere it traveled.
Wow.
Yeah, it's actually really cool.
And you know how the...
Wait, is it true what you talk about the gold thing? Someone said that if the coins aren't touching each other when they're on the bottom of the ocean, they don't, like silver. If they're... A buddy of mine was telling me, if they're not laying on top of each other, they don't get all corroded. Something about
I don't know.
Where the coins, when metal touches metal, it causes something.
It's like some kind of chemical reaction.
Yeah, or something.
Depends on the kinds of metals.
Yes.
And that would, if it's
like silver
gold,
right.
Your gold's not going to tarnish your other gold.
But if you were to look at one of those coins, they are not perfectly round,
silver.
And they're stamped with the ports, with the original shipper, and they're stamped with.
Hey, you know what? Send that picture. Send that picture. We'll put that on there.
The other cool thing is, do you know why boats are weighed in tonnage? Every boat, especially
because of ballast, they got a ballast, right?
It has to do with the ballast, but
ballast system.
You take a 51-foot, fishing boat, and it says it weighs 13 tons. It's not actually how much the boat weighs; it's how much it can carry in gold bars.
Yes. So what I still do is an 18.
Oh, so 100-ton license means it can carry 100 tons.
100 tons. It doesn't weigh 100 tons. So what I do is I register vessels as U.S. Coast Guard documented vessels. So if your boat is about 25 to 26 feet with high gunnels, right, which means it has tall sides, if that boat is determined to be able to carry 8 tons of gold bars to a different country, it's not a boat. It's a ship. And that's how I register them with U.S. Coast Guard.
So you wouldn't want 16 tons, right?
Well,
because what do you get? A little bit older and deeper in debt. I just set you up. Or you said 8,000. He said, wow, that's half.
If you see a boat that has a name and a hailing port on the back, so if you see a boat that its name is, Sunset Cruise, hailing port, Key Largo, Florida, that's a U.S. Coast Guard registered vessel.
Which is now called yacht certified.
There's an interesting, it's maritime laws are really interested on how there was a movie called Reap the Wild Wind. It was a John Wayne movie. We talked about it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's about salvage people and stuff like that. But I think salvage and treasure hunters have to adhere to similar rules. Like when you find a treasure, you have to claim it you have to do something with the government if it's within.
Right.
And along with modern day laws, it is so hard to salvage anything.
Honestly, as well, though, and then Jacob Hausman with Indian Key was one of the biggest spots because there were so many treasure hunters down here. The reason that we have all of these lighthouses out on this reef is because vessel after vessel after vessel has completely been demolished running around on this reef, and all of their dowry would end up in the water. So these treasure hunters would go out and they would search and they would dive and they would bring all of this gold and jewels and everything back.
Indian Key.
But they had to stop and check it in, and therefore pay a tax on that in order to keep it. And that's why Jacob Hausman had Indian Key settled and actually had it temporarily named the county hub of Miami-Dade.
Yes.
Until it got taken back later.
And
of course,
the other sad part about that is any shipwreck or any dowry that was found near Indy when they were first established had to be shipped down to Key West.
Right. And then during the shipping of the gold, the findings, the treasure hunters shipping it down to Key West, there were so many opportunities for theft.
Yep.
There were so many opportunities for the
so no matter how much gold you found,
stolen,
you weren't guaranteed all that back.
Right.
Even
so
though
then
you accounted for it.
When he made that hub at Indian Key, the shipping port for customs to check all those things in, he made a killing on it.
Yeah.
And
I know modern day, like, I don't know if Mel Fisher do, but a lot of these guys, the one of the USS America with the bullion coming from the gold rush, they had to get investors because obviously it takes a certain amount of resources to get that, and then you got to split whatever you have to do. You got to go and get the legal. You have to have you have to create a company to do it. And Mel Fisher was one of the most successful ones to do it. But in his, we mentioned in one of our previous shows that he had a gold bar.
Yes.
In a display where you could go in there and actually touch it.
That was at the Mel Fisher Shipwreck Museum.
Yeah, and actually my buddy, who was a private investigator in Philadelphia, he says, he put his hand in and he chubby little Italian guy, and he goes, I bet. I go, no, you can't. They figured out how not.
I didn't see that last time we were down there.
No, well, it got stolen.
Yeah, it's back now.
No, but someone stole it.
Someone stole it.
And how they end up? Does anybody know?
Well, if you go on YouTube and you try and Google YouTube gold bar glass case, there's like a Chinese or a museum that has a gold bar inside of a glass case, and you have to try and get your hand in there and pull it out. And it's been done several times.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's what Mel Fisher, that he had one in there where you could put your hand in and grab it.
Yeah.
But you couldn't get it out. And your hand had to be a certain size to be able to get in there and stuff like that. But yeah, but you said really you couldn't. Cool. You could get it out?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a challenge that I saw.
You get to keep it?
No.
Oh, fuck.
But, when you go down again to the Mel Fisher
the Shipwreck Museum.
I mean,
it is amazing.
Did they still have the gold bar in
Yes.
there?
Yes.
And they have it, you could go and touch it again?
You can touch it.
There's all the doubloons, everything down there. It's all authentic.
But it doesn't look like what you would think. It doesn't look like a gold bar that you would think that you would see in the movies.
Yeah.
No.
Because
it's not Italian job
it's kind of molten or something like that, right?
It's all by the weight. It has nothing to do with its exact shape. It's all by the weight.
No, it's like it's something not and was it Die Hard 3?
And they're all stamped.
Where you get to see the most of it, or
with
Kelly's Heroes.
My favorite was the Italian job when the went into the water and they grabbed all the gold bars out of it. That's not what you're looking at.
Gold bar, you know what? It's always seemed like a diamond, but then again, you have to cut the diamond. Everyone's like, "Well, that's the biggest fucking diamond in the world
to keep it shiny."
What?
Quite often. How often do you have to polish gold?
No, you could just melt gold.
I know.
Or you can almost melt gold in your house.
But what I'm saying is when you go into the museum down there, you're like, if people think like gold bars, you're expecting like this beautiful shined, mirror finish. No, that's not what it used to be.
I imagine that when the people go to one of those, go to one of those where you can mine, you're paying for your own gold. And they think you're going to find a big fucking nugget, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some people did find something.
Listen, you want to find your own gold, you go to the liquor store and you go buy a bottle of gold water. That is actual gold.
And you can shit it out the next day. You get gold flakes in your shit.
But an actual real gold bar does not look that beautiful.
No.
And they're kind of oblong and fucked up and sideways. And none of them are perfectly flat. It doesn't look like you would see in the movies. And they have those cool portage stamps on them from every time they've gone through any customs port. So it's really neat to see because that's how they read it. And they're like, you can see, okay, well, this gold bar came from Spain, went through Panama, went through here, and all of a sudden ended up in Key West. Like it had all of those port stamps are on there.
If anybody's listening
and every
is
port
a
has their own stamp.
Big time reader, one of our old neighbors was a co-author for a book called Diving to the Flash of Gold.
Yes.
Which was all about shipwreck diving.
Yes. He was a master diver. He actually owned the house right next door to us. His name is Steve. I won't say his last name but Steve was a co-author.
He has a book. We can just talk about his book.
Yeah, well, it's called Diving to the Flash of Gold. And just really cool about all the shipwrecks and looking for where everything was. And honestly, we've seen plenty of sunken boats and shipwrecks out there. Of course, they've been like completely scavenged for anything that you could possibly find now. There hasn't been a vessel carrying vintage gold that's run aground.
I bet there's probably tons of it.
I'm sure.
In the deep waters, you know.
You hear more of like in Ireland and the UK of them finding, archaeological facts or whatever.
Archaeological.
Yeah.
It's better you than me, man.
There's more of them being found nowadays than shipwrecks.
What? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a buddy of mine down here who has he has these. They look like urns, and they're from Crete. And I go, well, what are you doing with them in your house? And he goes, well, I can't sell them. He says because they're not supposed to be here. Yeah. My father got them. And I go, what? And he goes, yeah. If he tried to get them authenticated, the Turkish or Greek government would
they take them back.
Yeah.
Just like anybody from back in the day in the 30s, 40s, and 50s that have any turtle shells. I mean, those are prized possessions now. You can't have them nowadays.
Even the ones from 30, 40.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay. You ever see that movie with Miracle of Santa Ana?
No.
Spike Lee movie? This black unit in World War II gets trapped behind enemy lines in Italy. And if you ever seen a movie, that TV show, what's that TV show about the football players in Miami? The one with, what's his name? The Rock in. You know what I mean?
Are you talking? Wait.
You know the movie? He's an agent?
Oh, no. I don't know.
Okay. Well, the black dude in it, he's a big black dude. He's in the unit, and he has a head of a statue, of a Roman statue, and he carries it around with him, and he talks to it all the time.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. It's pretty good. But, I mean, that's during World War II. That was a big thing. Talk about treasure hunting. That was more, that was looting. There's a lot of looting going on. I'm not saying the black dude was looting. I'm saying the Germans and
the Germans,
the Russians,
crazy.
The Russians and Americans. Americans. The Americans did it when they were going in there. They were taking this stuff, but they
took a lot of stuff out of the eagle's nest. Like that was crazy.
Well, they should have. Screw them. You know.
No.
I was freedom. Well, that's pretty much. I don't know how we got that from the treasure hunter. If we find any treasure,
looting.
I mean. It's very rare, I guess, except for someone maybe losing their ring nowadays. Because if it's a ship, there's going to be a field, right, of debris. Yeah. There's going to be a field of debris, and it's so shallow here. They probably mapped everything on the bottom of it. People have these things on their airplanes. They probably can map the bottom of it with metal detectors or whatever. Yeah. Everything's been mapped down right here. But if you get in some deep water out here, I wouldn't be surprised. There was a Spanish treasure fleet that went off down one of the hurricanes in the late 1500s, right? There's this right down in Lower Matacumbi. There's a little monument. No, but it's called the Spanish treasure fleet.
Yep.
A bunch of their ships went down because of that, because it got blown into the reef.
Yeah, but there hasn't been a discovery down here in God knows how many years.
No.
I don't think anything's actually been discovered since Mel, but
yeah.
I wonder if maybe in the mangrove
in deep water.
Well, recently there's probably the water level's been going up, whether it's natural or man-caused, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That if there's any areas where the pirates buried something here, but there's not a lot of, you got coral underneath, so unless you need alluvial earth to be able to bury something, right?
I heard Jack Sparrow buried something here on
ago. I think there's rum.
Gone.
What's his name?
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
He buried a ton of coke someplace. Okay, well, listen, since we're at the end of great time to end the show. We did 2 shows today.
We did 2 shows today. And, if you ever want to come down and go on a treasure hunting adventure, there's places that can bring you out there to go snorkel and scuba. And
can they see you?
You can actually wreck dive here as well.
I mean, I have my own company as well. People want to come down and go and see why we live here and what we do.
Where would they? How would they reach you?
They would go to Captain Tyler's Adventures and Repairs, because he's also a mechanic.
We don't have a website yet.
Yes.
Oh, you will. Just listen. It's going to show up.
Yes.
And then this will be here. So they'll have a website.
Yep.
If you Google it, it'll come up. But Captain Tyler, and you put in Key Largo.
Or I can just blast out my email. I don't care.
Oh, you do that too?
Yeah.
I mean, either way.
Yeah. Or Riva Motorsports and Marine.
You can get. I'm sure if you come back, once he gets the website, we'll have it attached to the show.
But
so it doesn't matter.
If you're coming down here soon and want to go out on the boat, it's my email is Tyler, Tyler, last initial K, 1298@gmail.com. So Tyler K.
Whatever you want to give out, man, it's cool.
It is what it is. I mean, I get spammed. I go through it every day, no matter what. So
really?
It doesn't matter.
It sucks, Tyler.
It's horrible.
You get too much of it, because I have it now with the podcast. Not that I have tons of.
He gets hit a lot of it. They're like, "Can we rent your baby?"
Yeah. Can we rent? Well, not for the baby rentals, but for boner pills and Russian brides. Asian brides,
topics we've talked about.
Asian brides, hotmilf.com, whatever.
You're getting blasted.
Well, that's because you're married to a hot MILF.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Hold it there. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank
again for
Tyler and Jenna. This has been a great show. Go and find your treasure in 2020.
Absolutely.
No matter what it might be.
Yes.
We'll help you find it.
Cherish it.
Yeah. Keep it dear. Bye.
Bye.